Let's bring in Peter King from NBC Sports and his great Monday column, Football Morning in America. Pete, let me start with that. The worst loss of the weekend was turned in by who?
I would say the Rams, not because of the meaning of it. They're still going to get a bye in the first round of the playoffs, whether they're 1 or 2. But it was just a lot of scars showed this weekend for the Rams. Could they play in a cold weather game? Could they block a great defense? When you're running up and down the field against the Kansas City Chiefs, when they've got a bunch of guys hurt, that's one thing. But they played a team at full throat, the Chicago Bears, and they didn't handle the pressure well. And not only, as I wrote this morning, it wasn't only the pressure from Akeem Hicks and Khalil Mack. I mean, there's pressure coming from everywhere, sort of leaking through. And so I thought that was a poor performance by them and not a great harbinger of what's to come.
Yeah, I guess I looked at it as Jared Goff now back-to-back weeks, and I've said all season long, I think their success is really predicated on how he plays. And whether that's fair to him or not, it feels like that's still the question mark that I have week in and week out. Is that fair to?
I would agree. With you, and I think that's one of the things that sort of colors what everybody does when they pick an MVP. There's been, there's a lot of people who don't necessarily think that it should just be the province of a quarterback. Yeah. But the fact is, the quarterback is the most valuable player in all sports. It's hard to imagine, let's say in the case of Aaron Donald, even if he had played great last night and they won, it's very hard for me to put a defensive tackle on that list because it's not called the most outstanding player. It's called the most valuable player. And I think that if Sean Mannion has to play, I think he's their backup quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to imagine they're the greatest show on grass without Jared Goff right now.
Explain to me what's going on with the Steelers, if you can.
I wish I could, Dan. My gut feeling is that this is a team that really predicates so much of their success is predicated on being able to run the ball and being able to, because Ben Roethlisberger is not a guy who gets out of trouble very much. He's a guy who's a lumbering big guy. You need to have a very good running game, and B, you need to have the ability to get the ball to your backs in space so they can make big plays. And they had that with James Conner, obviously, this year, and they had it for 5 years before that with Le'Veon Bell. So I think without both of them, they start the game at a severe disadvantage. And I also think that one of the things that's happened to them is that, I think this has been the case for most of Mike Tomlin's years, at least for most of his years since Troy Polamalu is gone anyway. They really have a hard time defending the deep ball. And they haven't had good fortune in the draft getting corners. So I think that they ran up against a team yesterday, a team that can throw deep, even a team without Amari Cooper, because Derek Carr likes to throw the ball deep. And so those are a couple of things. I didn't watch that game closely yesterday, but that's what I've thought about them for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
So the Steelers have a tough loss. Nobody had a tougher loss than the Patriots, and now the Steelers host the Patriots coming up next weekend. How do you think this plays out?
That's a good question. I mean, it's odd in the first place that these teams meet in the same week at the same time at the same place as they did last year. The Jesse James Bowl. And I really think it's a pick'em game. Whatever, I have no idea what the line is, but I think this is just extremely close. It's going to be a desperation win for the Steelers to get off the schneid. And for the Patriots, they're still one game away. I just don't think the Patriots entering this game can be as desperate as Pittsburgh is. I don't know. Parcells always used to say the desperate team usually wins. And I think the Steelers are going to be a lot more desperate to win this week.
Talking to Peter King, NBC Sports, and his great column. It's must read. It's Football Morning in America. How do you explain what the Patriots did at the end of that game?
I think they made a mistake. I mean, if you look at what happened at the end of that game, this is not a Hail Mary situation. When Ryan Tannehill released the ball, he was standing on his 21-yard line. Or 31, I think it was. Was it? No, he was standing on his 21, but I think the line of scrimmage was the 31.
Yeah.
But the thing about what happened to the Patriots is that I agree. Devin McCourty should have been on the field. He's the most trustworthy defensive back on that team. The fact that he wasn't on the field is a mistake, obviously. But I would just say this, still and all, that is a 1 in 500 shot that's going to work. It just is. And as much as you want to say, boy, Belichick's slipping or such, I mean, you got 11 guys out there who can't make a play. Really, probably 7 guys who can't make a play. And that's the kind of thing that always really surprises me. But give credit to the Dolphins, because they practice this every Saturday. I talked to Kenyon Drake about it afterwards, and he said, this is what happens when you practice something a lot, and we've been practicing it basically since I got here. The amazing thing, Dan, is what Drake told me after the game. We were almost finished. I had maybe 10 minutes with him on the phone. We're almost finished, and right at the end, he said to me, when I walked into this building when I first got drafted in 2016, I shook hands with Coach Gase, and he said, "We drafted you to beat the New England Patriots." I mean, how eerie is that? And so that's he's. I guess if he never plays another down for him, he's kind of paid off.
You mentioned in your column that it was 5 weeks ago that the Cowboys lost to the Titans on Monday night. And since then, they won by 7, 3, 8, 3, and 6 points. They got the right formula here. You got that defense is, improved, and you got the ground game here. You don't have to rely on a quarterback throwing 40 times. You got at the Colts, you got the Buccaneers, at the Giants. Handicap the Cowboys the rest of the season.
Well, they're going to win the division, obviously. They got a 2-game lead with at least one, not easy, but one game that they clearly ought to win, and that's Tampa Bay at home. But then after that, they got 2 intriguing games. I mean, the Giants all of a sudden are sort of a strange team, and the Colts are going to need that game more than the Cowboys need it, believe it or not. So I think they don't have an easy road, so they'll probably be the 4th seed, I would guess. But the thing that intrigues me about Dallas, I went to visit Matt Millen, who you probably know is awaiting a heart transplant. We were just talking about football, and so he watches everything. He's watching everything. He's reading books, and he's sitting there, sort of just kind of waiting in this hospital in New Jersey. One of the things he said was he just could not stop talking about Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. And as I have said, I mean, he thinks that they're the best 2 linebackers playing in tandem in football right now.
Wow.
And when you have 2 guys in the middle of the field who are sideline to sideline playmakers, it negates so much of what an offense can do. I think that's what's happening with Dallas right now. They're getting the table set by 2 very young guys on defense as much as they're getting the table set by Ezekiel Elliott.
We look at the Heisman Trophy Award, and we're waiting for signature moments. Do we do the same with the MVP in the NFL?
I don't. I mean, I always look at this. I mean, I write in my column every week. Basically, if the season ended today, here's who I'd give it to, and I'd give it to Patrick Mahomes today. 2 weeks ago, I would have given it to Drew Brees. But obviously, the season has to be taken in its entirety. I think you do yourself a disservice if you rely either on emotion or recency bias, because a game in week 2 means the same as the game in week 16. So, having said all that, I mean, I know how I vote for it. I don't vote as who's the hot hand in December. I mean, but if a guy has the hot hand in December and leads his team to the playoffs or to the promised land or something, that probably is going to mean a significant something. But right now, it would, I think it's Mahomes, Breeze, then probably Rivers. And then after that, I think it's a pretty big mishmash.
Pete, good stuff as always. Great read, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, really appreciate it, Dan. Have a great week.
That's Pete King, NBC Sports Football Morning in America.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.